Sarah, Jack, Emily, Alex, and Ryan were five close friends living in the university dormitory, each studying in different departments. Throughout their time in the dorm, they had embarked on many adventures together, but this time, the invitation they received piqued their curiosity and excitement like never before. A sex party at an abandoned and supposedly haunted mansion. Who could resist? The invitation was elegantly written in red ink, with the words "Experience a night you won't forget." Exclusive to invitees only. When they gathered together, they began discussing the invitation. Emily said, these kinds of parties are usually overhyped. I don't think it will be that scary. Besides, we deserve some fun. Jack laughed and added a haunted mansion, a crazy party, and a bit of fear. I think it's going to be an awesome night. Although Sarah was intrigued by the party, she felt a sense of unease deep down. I don't know, something feels off. But I'm curious, so let's go, she said hesitantly. When Alex and Ryan also agreed, they began planning for the next evening. The next evening, as they drove down an old, neglected road, the mansion finally emerged from behind the trees. Its large stone walls were covered in moss, and the broken windows glinted ominously in the darkness. It seemed like no one had lived there for centuries, but the dim lights and music coming from inside indicated that the party had already started. As they approached the door, the heavy wooden door creaked open by itself. Once inside, their eyes widened in amazement. The hall was glowing with its old grandeur. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and velvet chairs were placed in every corner. The party-goers, dressed in elegant attire, were scattered across various rooms. However, there was something strange about them. They all seemed to be acting as if they were in a kind of trance. As the party continued in full swing, the group grabbed a few drinks and mingled with the crowd. But as time went on, strange things began to happen. Ryan suddenly disappeared into the crowd, and no one could find him for a while. Emily claimed she saw strange figures reflected in the mirrors. Jack said he found an old gramophone playing by itself in one room. Sarah felt a cold hand on her shoulder, but when she turned around, no one was there. After a while, the group decided to search for Ryan. The mansion was enormous, with endless rooms and corridors. Just then, Sarah heard someone scream. The sound was coming from deep within the mansion. She called out to the others and ran toward the source of the sound. After passing through a narrow, dark corridor, they reached a large room. The door was left slightly ajar. When they entered, they froze in horror. In the middle of the room was a pool of blood and Ryan's lifeless body. His body was twisted in a horrific manner, and his eyes were still open, filled with terror. Emily screamed, and Alex struggled to keep from vomiting. Jack knelt beside Ryan and checked his pulse, but he was already dead. Sarah, in shock, slumped against the wall. "We need to get out of here now," she said with a trembling voice. But at that moment, the door to the room slowly began to close. Emily rushed to the door, but it locked shut. Jack and Alex tried to force it open, but it was in vain. Suddenly, the lights in the room went out. In the darkness, only the sound of deep breaths could be heard. Then, all of a sudden, whispering voices echoed around them. The voices were unfamiliar, speaking in a foreign language, muttering incomprehensible words. It was impossible to tell where the voices were coming from. Jack pulled out a lighter from his pocket and lit a small flame. What they saw around them was terrifying. Blood-red writings covered the walls, and dark shadows lurked everywhere. Sarah cried out, "They're going to do something to us. We need to find a way out." Emily discovered a hidden door in one corner of the room, embedded in the stone wall. "Maybe we can get out through here," she said. Together they forced the door open and found a narrow tunnel. The tunnel was long and dark, but they had no other choice. They entered the tunnel and began to move forward in the darkness. The whispers continued to follow them. As they walked through the tunnel, they constantly felt like something was watching them. At one point, the tunnel split into two. They had no idea which way to go. Fear and panic gripped them. Alex chose a direction and said, "We're going this way." The others followed him. However, soon after, the tunnel began to narrow, and the air grew colder. They heard another door slam behind them. The way they came had been closed off. After some time, the tunnel opened into a large room, but this room was different from the others. There was an old, dusty table with a book on it. The book was filled with strange symbols. As Emily touched the book, a beam of light suddenly shot down into the room and began to swirl around them. The book opened in Emily's hands, and a voice echoed in the room, cursing them. Instead of freeing them, the book locked the room's door again and began to drain their souls one by one. At that moment, they all realized there was no way out. Sarah made one last attempt to escape, but everything went black when the light struck her. Only silence remained. The mansion returned to its original state, calm and foreboding. The next day, the other partygoers went on with their lives as if nothing had happened. But Sarah, Jack, Emily, Alex, and Ryan were never heard from again. Their belongings were left untouched in their dorm rooms, but they never returned. The legend spread across the university campus. Everyone talked about how the abandoned mansion had turned into a real nightmare, but no one knew how true this story really was. The only truth was that the 5 friends who had disappeared there never came back.